The most powerful man in Israel is about to break his own law. He's going to sneak into a cave, in disguise, under cover of darkness, to ask a dead man what his future holds. And the dead man is going to answer him, not with comfort, not with hope, with the worst news a human being has ever received the night before his own death.
Most people know this story as Saul visits a witch. That's the Sunday school version, the flat version. But we're not here for the flat version. We're here to ask the question almost nobody asks. Why does a king who once destroyed every medium in the land suddenly need one? What does that tell us about what fear does to belief? And when the ghost actually speaks, who or what is really talking? This isn't just a retelling. This is a psychological autopsy of a man's final night alive.
Years earlier, King Saul did something decisive. He outlawed every medium and spiritist in Israel. Death penalty, no exceptions. He scoured the land and drove out anyone who claimed to speak to the dead. This was the law of Moses, finally enforced.
This wasn't just religious housekeeping. Necromancy promised something seductive, certainty without faith, a shortcut past the silence of waiting on God. Saul, to his credit, once understood that shortcut was poison. Pause here. The man who was about to consult a medium is the same man who hunted mediums down. Hold on to that detail. It's not a footnote, it's the entire engine of this story. Saul isn't a villain who always believed in dark magic. He's a man whose convictions collapsed under pressure.
Now the Philistines have gathered for war, camped at Shunem. Saul's army is camped at Gilboa, and when he sees the size of the enemy force, something in him gives way. Fear, real, physical fear. He does what he's always done in crisis. He seeks God. But this time, nothing answers. Not dreams, not prophets, not the sacred lots of Urim. Silence.
Think about this. Silence from God is one of the most disorienting experiences a human being can have, arguably more destabilizing than a clear no. A no gives you somewhere to stand. Silence gives you nothing. It leaves a vacuum, and human beings cannot tolerate a vacuum. We fill it with anything. This is where many misunderstand Saul's downfall. They think the witch caused it. She didn't. The silence caused it. The witch was just where the silence led him. Desperation doesn't usually announce itself as rebellion. It disguises itself as one last reasonable option. Saul disguises himself. The king who made this practice a capital crime now travels in secret, at night, to commit the very crime he outlawed.
Samuel, the prophet who anointed him. The prophet who, near the end of his life, told Saul that God had rejected him as king.
Notice who he asks for. Not a general military strategist from the afterlife. Not a comforting ancestor. He asks for the one voice that already condemned him. As if some part of Saul still hopes that hearing it again, differently, might undo it. This is the psychology of a guilty conscience seeking permission. Saul doesn't go to Endor because he doesn't know what's coming. Deep down, he already knows. He goes because some wounded part of him is still bargaining, hoping the verdict will change. If he just acts the right way, at the right hour, in the right disguise, we do this too. We re-ask questions we already know the answer to, hoping reality will soften on the second try. But it never does. But this is where everything changes. Because something happens in that cave that the woman herself does not expect. Something that terrifies even her. And what comes up out of the ground is not what anyone in that room was prepared for.
The moment the woman performs her ritual, she screams,
"Why have you deceived me? You are Saul!"
She recognized him not by his disguise slipping, but by what she saw rising. Whatever appeared was enough to instantly expose the most powerful man in Israel. Then Samuel speaks. Not a vague, comforting message, a devastating one. Tomorrow, Saul and his sons will die. The kingdom will fall to David. This is the end.
Here's where serious students of this text pause, and you should too. Scholars have debated this scene for centuries. Some argue this was a demonic impersonation, since necromancy is forbidden and presumably wouldn't actually work. Others argue this was a unique act of God. God sometimes overrides the rules of a situation to deliver a final sealed verdict, much like he used a pagan king's dream or a foreign prophet's donkey elsewhere in Scripture. The text itself treats the figure as genuinely Samuel, delivering a genuinely true prophecy. This is where many misunderstand the scene entirely. Notice that even if something supernatural responded to Saul that night, it did not give him new information. It only confirmed what the real, living prophet Samuel had already told him years earlier, face to face in the daylight. Saul didn't need a seance. He needed to actually listen the first time. The tragedy isn't that the truth was hidden from him. It's that he'd already buried it.
Saul falls to the ground, full length, overcome with terror. He hasn't eaten all day, and now his body simply gives out under the weight of what he's heard.
Pause here. This collapse is worth sitting with. Saul is, by every measure, a battle-hardened king. He has led armies. He has faced death on fields of war before. Nothing breaks a person like hearing their ending spoken aloud by a voice they cannot argue with. There's something almost unbearably human in what happens next, preparing a final meal for him. The servants press him, and he does. He eats a final meal, prepared by the very person whose practice he once made illegal, hours before walking to his own death. Even kings, in their last hours, need someone to simply feed them and tell them it's going to be okay, even when it isn't. That's not weakness. That's the last fragile thread of being human.
By the next day, Saul rejoins his army. The battle comes, and exactly as spoken in that cave, Saul's sons die in the fighting, and Saul himself falls on his own sword, rather than be captured.
Most retellings stop here and say the lesson is, don't consult mediums. That's true, but it's surface level. It treats the story like a warning label instead of a mirror. Here's the original layer most people miss entirely. This story isn't really about the supernatural risk of seances. It's about what happens to a person who spends years suppressing the truth about themselves instead of repenting of it. Saul knew for years he'd lost God's favor. He had chance after chance to turn back, and instead, he spent his energy hunting the very practice he'd eventually crawl toward in desperation. The cave at Endor wasn't the moment Saul's fate was decided. It was simply the night the bill came due. Every choice he buried instead of facing came due at once. In the dark, in disguise, in front of a stranger. That's the real horror of this passage. Not the ghost, the audit.
Here's what makes this ancient story uncomfortably modern. Most of us will never sneak into a cave to consult a medium. But how many of us, late at night, search for answers in places we already know are empty? How many of us ask the same unresolved question to 5 different people, hoping one of them gives us the answer we want instead of the one we already know is true? Saul's real sin wasn't curiosity about the future. It was a lifetime of refusing to deal honestly with his present. The cave didn't create his crisis. It just revealed how long he'd been avoiding it. The question this story leaves behind isn't should I trust mediums? It's harder than that. It's what truth about myself have I already heard, clearly, plainly, in the daylight, that I keep walking into darker and darker rooms to avoid. So before you close this video, what's the one truth you already know that you've been hoping a different voice might say differently? Sit with that for a second. That's where this story actually lives.